a little bit later, she is dropping off snakes right now. So depending on how much traffic, she'll probably make it towards the tail end of the podcast. But I figured I wanted to show off this shirt, and it wasn't specifically for this guest. It was just kind of happenstance, but it all worked out. So thank you, Brittany and Caleb of Hope Education, for making these shirts. And I'm glad to give them money to support everything that they're doing over there. As far as Port City Pythons go, portcitypythons.com. We have like a few corn snakes available. I feel like we're getting low. We've been selling a lot at shows, and we are, kind of busy as far as putting animals up on the website, and I'm a little bit behind. So if you want to hit me up, if you see any projects that should be ready to go, and you're like, what the hell's going on, just hit me up. Unless it's Eastern Black King snakes. Still not eating. 100% not eating. Good start. So working on that. I will keep you guys posted, though. I may have to assist feed start all of them, which is going to be dreadful. Mouse tails, rat tails, whatever. We'll make that work. But today's guest is Greg Brashear, and Greg is from Greg's Turtle Haven, and he is a field herper as well as he keeps turtles and tortoises. So, Greg, thank you so much for being here.
What's up?
So I didn't know that you and Noah knew each other, and I just happened to book you guys like 2 weeks apart, which I just thought was weird.
Yeah, that was funny because we were actually going herping, I think, that night that he was on with you guys. And he's like, oh, I'm doing this podcast. I'm like, oh, which one is it? And he was like, From the Ground Up. And I was like, dude, I'm doing the same one in like 2 weeks.
And like, I was like, oh, we're totally mixing it up because like, it seems like you go herping like, or specifically look for turtles, and you also work with turtles, and Noah like seems like he's doing West Texas stuff. Never did I think that somehow those worlds collided. And you guys were literally out herping last night, weren't you?
Yeah. I'm fried because I was out during the day. I'm like sunburned, and then I hit up Noah, and then he was like, yeah, I'm gonna head up for to this one area for pygmy rattlesnakes. I was like, dude, I'm down. Let's meet up. Let's cruise, because I hadn't cruised for snakes all year, and honestly, this year in Georgia has been pretty crappy. I mean, it's you go and cruise for hours, and then you get like one brown snake or something, and you're just like leave your dignity in the road and go home. So I haven't done a lot of road cruising this year, and then so last night was the first that I've done in a while, and it was actually pretty good. I mean, we caught a couple cool snakes and got some photos and some video, and then we headed on down for some turtles, and that went good too.
Yeah, I saw you guys at least found a corn snake, which is what caught my eye, obviously on Noah's.
Yeah, and they're gorgeous up there too. They're like North Georgia mountain corn snakes, and the front part of the body is gold, and then it tapers down to like a silver, and then the saddles in that locality, the saddles kind of get small, and they almost look like an Alterna or something.
Whoa. Do you know what they look like as adults?
Pretty much that. I mean, the babies actually, when you first, and I have it in my video, like you walk up to it and you're like, it's a rat snake. And then you get over it and you're like, no, that's a corn, dude. Because they start off almost just like black and white or black and gray. And then like a shed or two in, it seems like that orange starts to really pop out.
So is it the same as it is in most other places in the U.S. as far as your eastern rat snake's going to be more common than, say, your corn snake in Georgia?
Yeah, Noah would probably know that a little bit better than me, just because I haven't done a lot of time in South Georgia. I know that around here, around the Atlanta area, yeah, it's 9 times out of 10, it's going to be, a black rat. Usually the only time it's a corn is when some redneck killed it thinking it was a copperhead. And you're like, no, the corn snake, there's like 10,
Yeah.
So, but as you start to get kind of further away from Atlanta, you start to go east, you start to go west, you start to go north. You do start to see corns in like little pockets and like little areas of, they like pine trees a lot. So you start to get that kind of scrubby tall grass and, isolated pine trees, and they really like that.
Sweet. So did you end up finding any rattlesnakes?
Nah, not to ruin the surprise, but no.
So you guys were filming and
yeah, it's funny because we're both working on the YouTube thing. So
yeah,
he does one and I do one, and it's funny because we'll be filming and he'll be doing his thing like, all right guys, we got this, and I'm like, hold my camera like, should I just let him do it?
Yeah, I mean, is it nice though that I mean you get to at least bounce things off each other? At least you both get to share in the experience.
Yeah, and it is actually kind of cool because I think a last trip we did to Alabama, that was kind of like what we talked about in the car, and talked about like, because sometimes you do feel a little bit goofy when you're like, hey, don't forget to hit the notification bell, you know, and so it does feel a little bit goofy doing that, but at the same time, it's like, who cares? It's fun, you're when people actually see it and they're like, oh, this is cool. I live in Alamogordo, New Mexico or something, and they're like, I never get to see, corn snakes, or I never get to see, striped mud turtles, or whatever random thing one of us has that maybe somebody else doesn't get to see, and then vice versa. If I watch like Noah's West Texas stuff, I've been to West Texas, but not really for herping, and so I never get to see all that stuff.
And it's also like a different brand of herping, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's totally different method.
Yeah. For me, it's like my comfort spot is being in the water, like waist deep, and not really knowing what else is in there. But that's just what I'm used to.
Is that common for you guys to go at night, or is that just a convenience thing for you?
Uh, for me, it's more common to go at night, just because, especially here in the summer, it gets so hot. Like when you get around late July, pretty much all of August, and then early September, it gets so hot here, and then the water levels start to drop. Most stuff doesn't come out during the day, so you either have to get there at dawn, and you have about an hour, or you go at night. And a lot of things, even stuff that's diurnal, like an active during the day, is going to be feeding at night, and kind of moving around in the forepart of the evening after sunset. And then it's like, once you're there, for that part of the night, might as well stay for the whole thing, because then all the really cool stuff, starts to come out, after midnight. You start getting a little bit more musk turtles, 11 to 12:31, and then after you go 1, you get into big female soft shells, and then around 3 a.m. You have the potential for big adult alligator snappers.
Oh, cool. So I mean, at different parts of the night, you can see all types of different things, so it can keep you occupied the whole night.
Yeah, and when those big guys are out, I mean, there's not a whole lot of other stuff that wants to be out. So, because they'll make a meal out of it.
Oh, that's awesome. So how do you exactly manage finding them in the dark?
So obviously you've got a headlamp and a flashlight. I mean, you look like a coal miner out there, but you basically are going along, and I've looked for this kind of stuff long enough. I just kind of like, you kind of are like, oh, okay, well, I can see that over here, this one came out from under a tree, and there's a bunch of, the bottom is all stirred up where it came out from underneath there. And then, or maybe over here, you see like, especially here, we have a lot of mussels and clams. So you'll see those things just all smashed up and destroyed, and then like a pit dug in the ground where it dug it up. So, okay, it came out of here, stopped and ate there. It's working its way up. You just kind of follow the little breadcrumb trail to wherever they're at.
Oh, sweet. So I had no idea the method there. And are you having do you have your camera with you, or are you using like some type of GoPro or waterproof?
I've started bringing my camera less the more it's become how I make a living. Like bringing a $3,600 camera and a bag full of lenses that are like how you make your living. My wife will remind me that's not very smart. So I bring it sometimes. I brought it last night, but lately, because I've been focusing on doing video, I'll bring like my phone. The new iPhone's good. It like shoots like 4K and all that stuff. So I've been using that a lot, and then I have a GoPro that I use when it wants to work, and then every now and then I'll bring I have like 2 cameras for work, so I might bring the other one sometimes.
Nice. So I want to kind of something I meant to ask before, but what prompted you to get into YouTube?
So I've always done it, like around 2003 or 4, around when YouTube first started. I started doing these like skate videos with my buddies, and nobody was really posting a lot of skate stuff, like their own content on there. But I was working in television, so I was like interning at Turner, and I was working on music videos, and kind of traveling around doing that, and doing different TV stuff. So I kind of had that mindset in the back of my head. So I was like, was like, dude, we could make like our own like YouTube show where we just go around the little towns and, you know, find whatever piece of crap they have to skate and make a clip out of it. So we went around doing that, and it started kind of, you know, it was like, oh, whoa, people are watching this, you know. So then I got into doing YouTube like that, and then around that time, that was also when like record labels started getting pissed about people using music. And I was just ripping whatever. I was like, Metallica, it's going in. You know, like The Who, it's going in. You know, like music rights, what are those?
Metallica in particular loves
Yeah. Lars was the main guy. Like, he's like, no, you're not doing that. And so like, yeah, so some of those videos, like the way YouTube dealt with it back then was it was like, nah, these are gone now. Like they just didn't exist after that. So then I started doing just kind of like whatever stuff on YouTube, and then I started a skateboard company and started doing like little promotional things. So I, you know, using YouTube so you can put it on Facebook or whatever. And then I started maybe 3 years ago, doing, you know, my herp videos and like doing stuff with turtles and all that stuff, just because I like doing it, and but not really like taking it serious. And then 3 weeks ago, this guy, Greg Whitstock, he owns this company, Aquascape, and they go around, they build these, you know, really nice ponds in people's yards and stuff. And they built a pond for my buddy Kenan, who does Camp Kenan. He has a channel on YouTube. And he invited, you know, him and a bunch of all these YouTube guys up there. And like, for what reason, me, because I'm like the alligator snapper guy, up to the Pondemonium event in Chicago. So I went up there, and I'm surrounded by all these YouTube guys, and they're all running around. They're like camera on a stick and stuff. And it's when you see like multiple people doing it, it's kind of silly, but it also looks kind of fun, because I was talking to Kenan, and he was like, yeah, some of these guys are making like crazy money. He's like, and that's all they do. And so it was kind of fun watching what they did. And then Greg Whitstock had like a really cool talk he was doing for, you know, these are all contractors that come to this thing that build ponds, and he was telling them, you know, for their businesses, like, start a YouTube channel, just have fun with it, you know. And for whatever reason, like the way he said it, and then talking with Ken, and it was just like, oh, maybe I want to do one where I take it serious, you know, see where it goes in a year, you know. Like, I know it can get monetized. If it does, I just put it back into my animals and my setups and stuff. You know, I make good enough money. I don't care about YouTube. So right now I'm just kind of having fun, like, you know, making the stuff and editing it and seeing if people like it, see if it helps people. And then I also maybe down the road want to try and use it as a building block for getting some educational permits in the state of Georgia, because Georgia has some kind of strict herp laws. So there's a lot of stuff I'd like to get.
You need to get yourself a corn snake.
I know, right? Like the essential. That's like the first one too. It's like the first one. Like whenever you talk to somebody from Georgia, they're like, "Oh yeah, the herp laws, man. I can't have a corn," you know. And it's funny, and they are some of the best pet snakes. I've had corn snakes before, and they're awesome. So yeah, that would be probably up there, like educational corn snake, and then pine snake, and you know, because I really love Pituophis. I have bull snakes and stuff.
Oh, really? So I don't know exactly what you keep on the private side. So what are you working with?
You know, just I have like a hypo bull, and I have a Kankakee bull, and don't tell the hypo, but I like the Kankakee like so much. That's just such a cool snake. If I could, I would just have 100 Kankakees and just stare at them all day. They're just they're so different from the other bulls. Like the way they're built almost a little pine snakey. They don't have that loaf of bread square shape. They kind of have that almost like a kind of slouchy shape like a pine has. I like their personality. I used to have black pines back in the early 2000s. I had black pines and all that stuff, and I love those snakes. And for whatever reason, I got out of them. And you know, then a few years later, they're like, this was before they were, you know, federally regulated. Yeah. So then because my thought was, if I ever want to get back into them, I'm like, oh, they're easy to get.
Not a big deal. They're like $100.
Kingsnake.com, you know, it could be at my house the next day. Yeah, I didn't like that no more.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I really like Pituophis. I like king snakes a lot. But if you're gonna make me pick between the two, I'll pick Pits.
Well, I don't mean to start like a frenzy and have people buying up like southern pines and Florida pines, but I think those are probably going to be listed next. I mean, it's always possible. Yeah,
the thing that sucks for pine snakes is there's just not that much of that habitat that they like left. It's like they're either going to build a neighborhood, or they're going to build an Old Navy and a Target, or they're going to build agricultural stuff on top of it. They like those pocket gophers. There ain't a hell of a lot of those left. So you're running out of stuff to eat, running out of places to live. Your other choice is just to get run over. So it kind of sucks, because if you're on the private side and you really like those snakes and you appreciate them,
and there's captive born and bred individuals hanging out, exactly. But you still may not be able to get your hands on them.
Yeah. In the state of Georgia, for northerns or Floridas, you've got to have some kind of educational permit. And then for Louisiana's blacks, you just have to hope there's a guy at the show that's not selling them for, your liver or something.
Right. So those are, I don't know, just amazing animals. But it's like, I think it's something like 6% of the original longleaf pine forest exists in the United States. So their habitat, it's so fragmented, and like what is left is super fragmented. So
yeah, it is. And I've been to some areas where there's old growth longleaf pine out here, actually close to my house. I actually live in a city in a county where there's a good population of northern pines, and seeing the habitat they live in is very funny because it looks, it's like kind of mountain meets deciduous, trees, but there's longleaf pines, and they're these gigantic, they don't even look like a longleaf pine you see in South Georgia. But then you go to South Georgia and you see the longleaf pine habitat down there, and it's flat, it's sandy, and you're like, how is this basically the same snakes and the habitat looks completely different, and they persist. I think there's more of them than people give them credit for, but anytime you have something secretive, pine snake, alligator snapper, when they're secretive and they spend most of their time, buried up under something and you can't physically see it, you can't really trap them efficiently,
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then I know these guys are trapping pine snakes out here, close to where I live, and they have a hard time getting them in that damn box. I think it's probably hard to trap a snake anyway, but
yeah, there's not many ways to get a snake to do what you want, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. But, follow this little tunnel into a box. Snake's like, yeah,
you just got to try to, I mean, I guess, are they just like picking any hole and hoping for the best, or do they have a hunch? How does that work?
And I don't run this or do this, but from seeing them out at the WMAs, they're picking an area that they know the snake moves at, where they've seen them and all that, and they basically you set up like a wall, and so the snake will hit this wall and then move along it, and then in the middle of that wall is like a box, and it's got some mesh, and it kind of comes to a cone, so that once they go through, they theoretically can't get back out. And it does get, they get like scarlet kings in there and king snakes and hognose and all that stuff. Pretty much everything but a pine will go in there.
Right.
Yeah.
So sorry that we went in the direction of snakes for.
No. I grew up loving snakes. I can talk snakes.
Do you have any other besides pits, or you said king snakes as well?
Yeah. Right now, just bull snakes.
Okay.
My wife isn't a big fan of snakes. She's from Thailand, so like snakes kill people where she's from, so they're not her favorite thing in the world. She's not thrilled that I have bull snakes. She kind of avoids them. Mm-hmm. But when I met her, I actually had like reticulated pythons and Dumeral's boas, and I had all these giant snakes. Mm-hmm. And then we had a really bad freeze that year, and everything got a respiratory infection and was dead in like a few days. So after that, I was kind of like, well, I'm just going to focus on turtles and tortoises, and I was kind of playing around with the idea of being a turtle farmer, and that ended up just not happening. And I just I appreciate them for what they are, and I don't really try to sell them for any reason. But there was a guy that actually lived down the street from me and he was exporting, hundreds of turtles a year. And he would call me up and he would ask me to come over to his house. And he's like, you got to tell me which ones are males, which ones are females, which ones are sick, which one's which species. And I'd go over there and I'd go to count these turtles, and there'd be some chick there and he'd be like, oh, she's going to help you. That's Tammy. She's a hooker. What? And yeah, so he'd have like this hooker helping me count turtles, and he'd be like yelling at her, telling her to take her top off and stuff. I'm just like, dude, let me just count, and so he would have a lot of turtles, and the thing is he was getting them, these guys would catch them and he'd buy them and bring them in. These guys would catch them, he'd buy them, bring them in, and he'd have a whole bunch of them. And this guy couldn't really move a lot. He was like super overweight, super old, bad health. He was just literally sit at his computer and set up the deals. And so he would pay me to sex turtles, do health check, and anything that he couldn't sell, you take it. So at one point, his big thing was musk turtles, and I ended up with a lot of musk turtles, and they're one of my favorites. So it didn't bother me. I knew how to take care of them, but the biggest problem is he built like a rack system. So it was like 3 or 4 tiers, and then it all went through like one big filtration unit with one of those huge water tanks. So the problem is he was running the water from all these turtles that had come from all these different plases.
Oh no!
If one guy was sick, it went to all of them. So I probably got over 100 turtles from him over the course of 2 or 3 years of him doing that. And I think by the time it was all said and done, maybe 20 lived at the most.
Wow.
And at this point, I think I still have maybe 10 I hung on to. What I could find out where it was originally from, I might have tried to release, but with them being sick, I didn't really try to do anything other than just find people that like them and want to give them a good home. And that was kind of what left a bad taste in my mouth with selling, turtles and tortoises, was kind of the demand was. And I don't know. I mean, you guys sell snakes. I don't know if the demand is the way with snakes that it is with turtles, but these Asian guys will hit you up and be like, okay, I like them, 600. I want 600 of them. You're like, what? They're not beans.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they do that with snakes, but
they do that now with corn snakes, but I feel like it's in a little bit more of a respectful way. I feel like the turtles and tortoises, unfortunately, I feel like are the most like exploited animals in our hobby, between sulcatas and the amount of turtles that I see on tables, at reptile shows. They're in bins and there's like 50 of them for $20 each type of thing.
Yeah, and they're all like waiting around in each other's shit and stuff. Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that's kind of another thing I saw where I was kind of like, oh, do I want to be a part of this? Is there, in the beginning I started off like, well, maybe there's a way I can change this, but it's kind of hard to be the guy to show up and be like, try and fix things. I mean, there's people that are doing it right. The problem is they're not a lot of times the people that are at the forefront or the people doing the most business.
Or they're just not able to. If you do the right thing, you're naturally going to do less numbers, and you're naturally going to have to charge a higher price, and people are just going to go for the lower price at the end of the day. Most of your normal consumers, but
yeah. And a big thing with turtles is 90% of the buyers are from Asia, and they want anything and everything. They'll buy it all. They'll offer whatever. I mean, I'll post a photo on Instagram of like a big adult, male alligator snapper. And when they get, really old, they get yellow. So they have this cool color to them. And, I'll get a guy from Hong Kong or something, and he'll message me and he'll be like, how much? And I'll be like, it's not for sale, man. It's a protected turtle. I caught it and released it. Where at? I'm not going to tell you. And I remember this guy, like, I still like to hunt the guy on Instagram. Like, I never let him forget. But like, he one time told me, he's like, I'll find out. I was like, what is that? Is that like some crusty threat? Like, you're going to come find out where this turtle was? But they're like that. And they offer you $8,000 or $10,000.
I mean, you could go to the reptile show we were just at. Alligator snappers were $40 each.
Yeah. Well, these guys, they want the ones from Georgia and Florida after the species split.
So can you explain? Because I'm ignorant of all of that. So yeah.
Okay. So So back in 2014, there was, I think it was a 1 year scientific thing where they went through and they looked at all the different river drainages, and then they looked at the genetics. They looked at the physical build of the turtles and the different river drainages. And so going from like starting in Texas at like the Trinity River, and then you start to work your way east into the Mississippi, and then you get into Pearl, Pascagoula, then you get into Mobile drainage, and then you get into Apalachicola, and then you get into Sewanee. So all those that are west of the Apalachicola drainage are considered western alligator snappers. And they're the typical ones you see at shows, Macrocheles, Taminkii. And they're the ones that have been bred the most, because what happened is a lot of guys went during the 80s and the 90s and even the early part of the 2000s when there was still commercial trade. You could go in Louisiana and you could just buy them on the street market because they were going to be made into soup. So a lot of those guys they commercially trapped them, or they went to those markets and they bought those adults and they started farming them. So the bulk of them came from Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, East Texas. So when you see your average alligator snapper for sale, on a table at a show, odds are they came from, one of maybe 3 or 4 farms in the U.S. And 9 times out of 10, they're Westerns. And then when you go towards the central area, the Apalachicola comes down through Georgia, and then another river separates Georgia and Alabama. That's the Chattahoochee. So the Flint and the Chattahoochee meet in Georgia, and then where they meet is on the Florida border, and then it becomes the Apalachicola River. So all those turtles were considered the Apalachicola alligator snapping turtle, and physically they're a little different. Me having looked at a lot of them over the course of a lifetime, the Apalachicolas are they're not as big. They don't have like as many size records of like really big turtles. I mean, there is, I think a record for a 300-pounder, but there was no photo or anything to prove it. But overall, from my experience, from what I've seen, their shell's a little bit narrower if you look down on the top of it. They're more compact build in terms of their body. They have short little muscular legs, and then they get really big heads like a loggerhead musk turtle, because as adults they go from using the lure as a baby and they gradually start to get into eating crayfish, and then they get a little bit bigger, they start eating little clams and snails. Then the adults, 90% of their diet is these big washboard mussels, and then little corbicula invasive clams. And when you catch these turtles, well, a lot of the times when we find them, they're face down, so they don't even know you're walking up on them because they're just digging on the bottom. They're just smashing those things up. So, and then the other species after that was the Sewanee, and then those are in South Georgia and North Florida. And so those are supposed to be the most genetically distinct. I mean, they have a physically different head. They have a different shaped shell. They have a lot of the same behaviors. They're more similar to the Apalachicolas in terms of their behavior and their diet and all that stuff. But so once those two were separate from the Westerns, those are what the turtle collectors really wanted in that. I remember there was a period right after that, like 2015, 2016, like my buddy Grover might even back me up on this, that there were guys just sending out these emails like, can you get these? We'll pay $8,000 each for 40-pound adults. And I was like, what? I remember forwarding them to the DNR and just being like, yo, this guy's asking for some sketchy stuff.
Well, yeah. See, we don't have the Asian buyers that I'm talking about is a totally different thing. That's super sketchy.
It is, and I mean, there was a period of time where it was almost unbearable. I mean, it was like you'd get online, there'd be a guy asking for alligator snappers, or then you'd get a DM of another guy asking for map turtles. Because all they're doing is they're looking at Instagram or iNaturalist or all this stuff, and they're like, oh, this guy found this here, okay, trying to reach out to you and wave money in your face and stuff. And then, I mean, it's been a while since any of that's happened, and I don't know if it's because I'm such a dick when they do it, or if I think that's kind of chilling out, because a lot of people are getting busted and stuff. There was a guy a couple weeks ago here got busted for having 1,000 traps on one lake.
Whoa. And I know a guy just got busted in New Jersey for Diamondback terrapins.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think every state they're in takes those pretty seriously, because that's another turtle that is pretty rapidly losing places to live.
And it's like, why, man? Just why?
Yeah,
I'm sure there's people captive breeding them.
there are. There's a lot of people captive breeding them for, I guess they call it the concentric pattern. Like that, people breed them similar to snakes. They'll breed them for pattern or for appearance. And like one of the more favored is like the thicker spots and more contrasty and all that. And I just don't know if that involves mixing subspecies. So like if you're wanting to get into breeding them for conservation, people are going to be looking at like, okay, well, where were they from? Where were the parents from? And
And typically hybridization to a certain extent is going to give you the best looking animals. It's going to give you crazy results, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, and I've seen them. I've been to shows and stuff, and I've seen those Diamondback terrapins. I just stare at them. I'm like, man, that thing is crazy.
I mean, yeah, that's just an amazing animal in every way, naturally and whatever the hell they're doing in captivity.
And they're so smart too. They're like little puppies.
Really? Do you have any? Or have
no,
you?
I've never had any, but I know a lot of people that have, and I know people at the Atlanta Zoo and all that stuff. They have a program there, and I know a lot of buddies. I have buddies all over the U.S. that keep turtles, and I know a few that have done Diamondback terrapins, and I know a lot of people keep a lot of turtles, and then they get Diamondback terrapins, and all of a sudden that's all that they keep. So I mean that I feel like that tells you something about them being a good turtle to keep.
Do you have to keep them brackish?
So my understanding is if you get them as hatchlings and you get them in freshwater, they'll adapt to freshwater. And obviously if you're doing captive breeding, then that shouldn't be an issue. I think the people that are getting like wild caught ones, I think that's when they're having a hard time like getting them off of brackish. But I don't even know if there's anywhere collecting is legal of those anymore. But
yeah, I think so.
So if you're trying to watch out for that, and a guy's trying to sell you some brackish Diamondback terrapins, that guy sucks.
Yeah. I mean, people are just sketchy. But as far as what you keep, are you keeping outside at all there?
Yeah. So other than I have like a little aquarium right here in my office, everything's outside. So musk turtles, mud turtles, cooters, sliders, soft shells, snappers. And then all my tortoises, everything's outside. And when I bought this house, it was like, you're looking through like Trulia and Zillow, and I'm just like skipping the house and going to the yard. Like
for me, it's like detached garage, or finished basement.
Yeah.
For you, it's like pond or just space.
Yeah. I was like, my original thing was like, I need 5 acres. And then I went and looked at a place that was 2, and I was like, I don't know what I'd do with all this, And then land in Atlanta isn't cheap either. And it was like, my wife wanted to be close to work. Being as, doing weddings and stuff, I have to kind of be all over Atlanta. So I didn't want to be, driving an hour and a half just to get into town. So where we ended up getting was a pretty good split, and it's a little over a half acre, which is plenty. I remember I got this adult sulcata when I moved here, and I was like, I'll never have to mow the lawn again, and it's too much for him. So it's a good deal, and I basically get up every day and kind of walk around the yard and check on everybody, and I'm always looking at what I can work on or what I can add and stuff like that.
So I saw on like your Instagram, particularly in your bio, it says, setting up naturalistic environments for these animals. So what does that mean exactly for you, and what does that mean for each species that you keep?
So growing up as a kid, I kept turtles in aquariums and stuff like that. And I noticed that you're going to run into more headache trying to do that and trying to keep that water clean and keep them kind of happy, because turtles have a hard time with glass. They just don't register that it's there. So like, if you've ever had a turtle in a tank, they're like
every red ear spider you've ever seen at anywhere. Yeah.
And they'll do it all day. Just and so my dad growing up, he had eastern box turtles, and they had like a big fenced in yard. And I don't even remember how old I was, but I started getting some tubs and putting them on my parents' patio and moving my turtles into that. And then I was skating with one of my buddies, and I found this old pond liner from like where this elementary school. I guess they'd had a little thing for the kids to build a pond, then they were over it, so they threw it in the woods. So I stole it, and I brought it back, and I built a turtle pond with it. And I remember just all my turtles. It was just like a night and day difference. They're just, you get new behaviors that you never see in an aquarium or inside, and letting them go through the seasons, you get better growth, you get better health. As soon as I did that, I was like, this is the way to do it. They're just, they're so much happier outside. I mean, I know a lot of people doing aquariums and doing, some really awesome stuff with that. But just for me, if I have the ability where I live to keep them outside year round and let them live like as naturally as I can, I'm going to do that. They seem so much happier.
Yeah. If you are keeping inside, I mean, I've seen people keep those black, like feeding troughs, I guess they would be, or something like that. I mean, are those passable?
No, yeah, those are what I use. One of my last videos I posted was me going and buying one of those. I'm like, we're going to set up a snapping turtle in this. And so I go to Tractor Supply and I buy one of those. And, as long as you clean it up and everything, they're perfect because they're a visual barrier because they're not glass. So the turtle stays pretty calm in there. They have a little drain plug. So like when you do need to clean them out, pull that plug out, clean it all out, fill it back up. I don't do a lot of water changes. That's another thing, is like, I think water changes are another enemy that people don't really realize, because when you're bombarding them with hard water that's been chlorinated, even if you run some dechlorinator through there, the water coming through your pipes is way harder than any pond or any natural environment. That's why, like, you see red-eared slider, you'll see like skin peeling off, and sometimes their shell will have that like weird oxidized look, and that's all from hard water. So a lot of my stuff has plants in it. It has multi-layers to the bottom. So I'll have sand and gravel, maybe a little peat in there. And then like when the plants, like a water hyacinth, kind of sheds off a layer, all that stuff goes to the bottom, and it kind of creates a cycle. And with soft shells especially, they need to dig into that. There's like a microbacteria, environment down there that keeps their shell clean and keeps them healthy. So I don't do a lot of water changes, but I do use those. To answer your question, I do use those troughs. I swear by them. I think they're awesome.
Yeah, I guess especially for snake keepers, we had for at least a very long time make sure everything was super sterile and super clean. So it seems like the opposite would be in play there.
Yeah, and it is funny because I do have snakes. So like, with my turtles, I don't have to do a whole lot of upkeep, but with the bull snakes, it's like every day you got to go downstairs because somebody decided to throw shit.
Pitch-you-overs in particular, yeah.
Like, what kind of party were you having? So yeah, it is funny. There are certain turtles that are more work than others. Like your map turtles, you might want to watch your water quality. Like I said, soft shells. The thing with soft shells is once that bottom is right, they just need to be able to bury into it and they'll be fine. Map turtles can be sensitive to water quality. Some of the Asian stuff is a little sensitive too. And then you've got like yellow mud turtles where, if you put them in clean water, they'll die. But if you never change their water and it's disgusting, they'll do better than ever.
Really? Is there any consideration to take in as far as giving them shade or sun, or how does that work?
So the first year of living here, I didn't know the path of the sun. And, throughout the year, the path of the sun is going to kind of move a little bit. So when I set up some of my first setups, I was like, oh, okay, so they'll get sun during the winter. And then winter came, and I was like watching the sun go by and never hit where I'd originally put this one pond. So I felt bad for them because they were like cold. And, even though it might have hit 55, 60 degrees, it was so cold that night, they just stayed at the bottom the whole time. So kind of looking at that, I like once I'd been here for a year and watched the path of the sun and where it hits, where it doesn't hit. And in the summer where it's getting super hot, for example, like this time of year, I can't even go into the back porch sometimes. It's so brutal just because my back porch faces where the sun comes, and it's like a clear cut. like going down my backyard. So the sun's just like literally like just like a laser just coming up the middle of the backyard. So I do like a lot. I plant like a lot of broadleaf plants. I do have like this like little patio cover thing. And then every single habitat has a place to hide or a place to get away from sun or predators or, me.
Right. Is there, as far as water temperature, I mean, are there temps that you're shooting for, or is it pretty?
Most of the stuff I keep, I don't really have to worry about that. I'm pretty. I would say I'm lucky, but I kind of picked on purpose to not have to worry about water temperature with some of my stuff. But the only turtles I have that are sensitive to that would be the striped neck musk turtles, because they live in like trout streams. So their setup has to be in shade all day. So, because, some turtles, the water is 80 degrees and they love it. If you put a striped neck musk turtle in 80 degrees, they're going to start getting really bad really quick. So I got a buddy that lives in Maine, and he has some, and he keeps them in his basement in Maine on the, the cold concrete floor, and they do great. So,
yeah. Is that something to where, I mean, people up here, I mean, I'm in Pennsylvania. So if people are looking to keep up here, I mean, are there particular species that you can keep out, outside all year round?
Where you live?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, your average red-eared slider, river cooter, softshell, snapper. I mean, I could give you a big list of stuff that would do fine up there.
Well, I guess a better question would be, how exactly does turtle brumation work?
The best way to do it is to give them just what they need to do it, which is pretty straightforward. So like, let's say you were in Pennsylvania and you were going to keep a red-eared slider outside. So we'll do an aquatic first. You'll probably want your pond to be 3.5 feet deep minimum. If you had like a 4 or 5 foot deep end, that'd be great. And you recirculate your water. So your water is moving so that when it does freeze, because it's going to freeze at some point, it's at least moving. And then what you want to have is some kind of substrate on the bottom. And then what I've figured out over time is the best thing is when those leaves fall in the fall, just let them stack up in there. They're going to get thick on the bottom, but what's going to happen is they're going to insulate that turtle when it goes into the bottom. And as those temperatures come down, they're going to slow their heartbeat down. They're not going to come up for air. They're going to just kind of basically breathe through their butthole. There's a thin skin in the lining of the cloaca, and they'll just absorb oxygen through that. They'll kind of pump their throat a little bit and absorb some through there. And I mean, literally just once they're down there and they're down, just leave them be. And that's all you got to do. I mean, it's scary the first couple times. I have some really nice map turtles, and the first time I left them out over winter, I was like, kind of like, I'd open up the door and I'd see like, here we get a thin layer of ice, but I'd still be, kind of looking at them and like nervous. Then we'd have a day, the next day, almost 70 degrees, and they'd be up basking. And you just have to trust that they know what they're doing. So for an aquatic, if I were you, I would just make sure you have something that's at least sank into the ground, 3 feet, they should be fine. For, let's say you had a box turtle, or a wood turtle or something like that. I mean, those are both probably protected in Pennsylvania, but
yeah, that's illegal. Yeah, but
yeah. So let's pretend you had a permit or something.
Yeah.
Like, a terrestrial type turtle like that, and you would just want to. What I do is I create a big berm of just mulch, and I'll also, like when I rake my yard or I get leaves, just throw all that stuff in there. You're just gonna throw all that stuff in there, and what's gonna happen is, especially mulch. I don't know if you've ever seen mulch in the wintertime, but there's steam coming off of it. Mm-hmm. So they're actually going to dig into there, and they'll just spend all the winter just buried into that mulch. And you literally just leave them be, like maybe make sure they have some water if you get a warm day and they want to come out. There's a guy and his wife I follow on YouTube, and they were backyard tortoise, I think is who they were. And they were in Pennsylvania, and they kept most of their stuff outside. And it was cool to watch because, being here, it's not as far north as there, but we do get some pretty bad swings. I mean, with us, it could be 60 degrees and then it'll get 14 overnight, and the next day it's 60 again. So it's like that sharp up and down is what's really hard. So watching somebody from Pennsylvania kind of go through the same stuff, and I watched it, it's like, okay, well, they're fine, I'm fine. So like, turtles are pretty resilient.
Yeah. Now, are you in the ponds for the aquatics? Are you adding any fish in there, anything else in there?
Yeah, I have dumb fish though. Like, I don't have anything fancy. I have like mosquito fish. I put mollies in there, but like I said, I have dumb fish, so I bought a gar. So when I put mollies in there, he was like, "Oh, these are delicious and slow."
Yeah.
So he ate all of my mollies, and so I have like mosquito fish that he picks off from time to time. And then I bought 2 plecos that were like that big a little over a month ago, and now they're that big. They're like pretty big now. They're about a foot long now. So I have 2 plecos I'd like to get rid of. And I'm probably just gonna move them. I have a big waterland tub. It's like a 300-gallon tub with like a land area. So I'm probably gonna move one of the plecos over to that. Because I do think they're cool. I like watching them move around and stuff. But
do those survive winter?
guess we'll find out. I'll probably move at least one to an aquarium and just do it as an experiment. Because this year I am going to drop like a heater into my pond. I just want to do it at 70 degrees. If I can get close to 70, I think everything will be fine and overwinter fine. Just because I've never ran a heater before, so I just want to see, how that goes.
Right. And what would you use to heat that? I mean, you would probably need something more than just your regular aquarium heater, right?
Yeah, there was this lady I met, and she was selling a stock tank with a stock tank heater. So apparently that's a thing. So
For like fisheries, is that what they would use it for, or
I don't know. My understanding is it was for heating up water in stock tanks for horses and cattle. If that's a thing. I mean, she was selling a stock tank with that heater, and everything is like a package. Problem was she wasn't realistic about what she wanted to sell it for. And I ended up not getting it, but it did kind of make me curious about it. So sometime in October or November, when it starts to cool off, I'll start looking at it. And if I don't run heat in there, everything will be just fine too. It's kind of more me just playing around.
Right. Then what are you feeding your turtles?
So I'm not a big fan of pellets. As somebody that I get a lot of rehomes. At one point, the Georgia Reptile Society was given my phone number, and then they gave it to everybody that needed a new home for their turtles. So in the course of 1 year, I amassed like a huge number of cooters because I won't take in sliders. I literally have a yellow-bellied slider that I use for videos and education. I have a red-eared slider for videos and education because sliders just in a social environment are just dicks. And so like I like having my cooters together, and they all get along pretty peacefully and everything. So I had a lot of people needed homes for river cooters last year. So that's a bulk of what's in my ponds. And pellets don't really work well with them. They'll start to get odd shells from all the protein in there. So I feed, duckweed, water hyacinth, water lettuce, green leaf lettuce, romaine, collard greens. I mean, I try to feed them as much natural stuff as I can. And then I also do freeze-dried krill from the Asian market. I do shrimp from the Asian market. I do crayfish when those are available. So all my turtles are getting natural food items as a bulk of their diet, and then pellets are like a supplement. So I kind of do it the reverse, like a lot of people do it the other way, like mostly pellets and then the other stuff.
Right. Is there any type of percentage of whatever prey item goes to what, or?
Yeah. So for like my Mexican giant musk, they're a mollusk specialist. So most of his diet is snails and clams and crayfish. So that's most of what he gets. But every now and then I'll give him a chopped piece of fish. He'll eat all my setups have plants in them. So when they want to eat vegetation, it's there for them. And then there's like little dragonfly larvae. There's some really dumb frogs that get in there. And so, sometimes they'll pick that stuff off too. So with him, he gets that. Musk turtles are getting mostly snails, clams, little crustaceans. And then for the tortoises, the sulcatas, they're like a grassland tortoise. So the sulcata and the Russians are mostly, just feeding on grass and whatever greens I give them. And then I have a yellowfoot tortoise and an Asian mountain and an elongated. And they're more of a forest tortoise, so they're going to find like pieces of fruit that fall off the tree, or they're going to eat like a dead animal. So you can have like a little more leeway with feeding them fruits or meat, or they'll eat worms. They're kind of like a box turtle. They'll kind of dig up stuff, and they're more omnivorous than like a sulcata. A sulcata's stomach is basically like a cow. You can't shove a whole lot of fruit through there without screwing them up. So,
gotcha. And do you have any like issues with humidity or anything like that with your tortoises?
I don't hear it. It's, for the most part, it's humid enough here that they do well. And it's not so humid that the sulcata doesn't do well. The only time humidity is an issue is when it's wintertime and it's raining. That's a problem, because cold and wet doesn't work, I don't think, with any reptile. So the sulcata has to come in during the winter. So does the yellowfoot and the other tortoises. So I basically, one of the things when we're talking about buying a house, this one doesn't have a basement, but the garage is basically, it's got double walls, so it's insulated. And so it'll hold in any temperature and humidity. And then they did the thing where they like painted the floor with that cool paint where you can like clean anything off. So I basically have everything set up in there through the winter. And if I get a nice day, I just bring them outside for the day. And then, around sunset, bring them back in. For the sulcata, I have like a wheelbarrow to kind of like save my back.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, that's the only time I run into issues with humidity is in the winter. And if you screw up once, like if I don't get home in time or something and it rains on them and it's 50 degrees outside, then they're going to start sneezing, and then I got to put twice the amount of heat on them and all that. But that usually doesn't really happen, just because with the amount of turtles I have, I watch the weather all the time. So I'm like, oh yeah, the weather's good today, especially like going through fall and early spring. You're kind of like, I just feel bad when they're inside, because, my sulcata gets to roam a half acre, and then in the winter he gets to, destroy my garage.
With a little light bulb over him.
And yeah. He's got the light bulb over him, and he's, not eating a whole lot of like fresh grass. He's eating a lot of Timothy hay. That's when I kind of have to switch over to giving him some Missouri, or I'm giving him a lot of, store-bought greens and stuff. And it's funny because like as nice as like store-bought greens look, like he would rather eat, my 15 different species of grass I have.
Right. And how do you bring it back to the other stuff? How do you source like your crayfish and mollusks and different stuff that you're using?
I use farmers markets. And my wife is from Thailand, so she's always going to like Asian markets all the time. So when you go there, they have everything. So I'll get my crayfish, and for the most part, if you want to kind of sterilize them, you can freeze them for a while, and that'll kill off a lot of parasites. So you can do that. Some of my turtles I've had for a long time, and they were, originally wild caught, and they've just been living out. I've got a big old male Florida snapper. That guy gave him to me, and he is wild caught, and he lives in a pond outside. And I really try not to mess with him too much because he's such an asshole. But like I'll just throw the live crayfish in there, and he doesn't have any issues with parasites or anything like that. And if anything does like show up with that, I mean, there's easy ways to get parasites out of turtles. So, but for the most part, yeah, I'll go to the Asian market and get all of the natural food and stuff, and just kind of throw it in the freezer, and you maximize your dollar too. I posted a photo on my Instagram today, and it was clams, apple snails, whole tilapia, and I mean all of that together for like under $10.
Wow. Yeah, I guess they kind of eat all the garbage food that not many people are eating.
Yeah. There's getting like the apple snails and stuff is awesome, because like I feel like that little booth in the frozen foods is for me.
Yeah, who else is going there?
I see that. I asked my wife, I'm like, who the hell eats that? And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, you don't know?
Make soup of it or something. Who knows?
Yeah. So I just see that, and I'm like, well, giant musk turtle.
There you go. And you alluded to things like RIs a couple times. So how do you treat, say an aquatic species and then also in your tortoises?
With aquatics, I do a 12-hour dry dock. And so what I'll do is I like to put them on cardboard because the cardboard will absorb all moisture. So they'll get totally dry overnight in cardboard. And then I just put them back in the water, make sure they have a dry basking spot. And most of I haven't had anything bad in a long time. And I think a lot of that has to do with keeping outside. So usually that's enough. I mean, if it's anything more than that, it's, time to go to the vet. With the snakes, I haven't had any problems with the bull snakes. With the tortoises, for whatever reason, every year my mountain tortoise will sneeze through the winter, but there's no drainage or anything. I think it's just more it's not used to being dry because it gets really dry here in the winter. Like the air just gets dry. So I would rather her be fine and maybe sneeze a little bit than go moisten her up and then we lose power in the winter and now she's cold and wet. So
right. And then something we skipped over, but Ryan in the chat asked if the Russian tortoise stays outside over.
Yeah, they do. And so this is actually my first year with the Russian tortoises, but the guy I got 2 from a lady that was keeping them in a glass aquarium, and they never got to go outside of a glass aquarium. So they have overgrown beaks and these crazy looking nails and stuff. And so one of the things I've been doing is feeding them off of a slate rock. We'll wear the beak down. I know some people will go at it with a Dremel tool, but sometimes when the beak is so long and you go at it with a Dremel tool, you risk it gets so much leverage on it, it can break farther up the beak and damage the nose. They can eat just fine, so I just do them off with a slate, and it'll just gradually wear the beak down. And then the claws, they're diggers, so they're just going to dig in the ground. And our ground here is pretty hard; it's clay and rock, so they can dig all they want. Those claws will come down. But the guy I got the bulk of my Russian tortoises from kept his outside in the mountains of South Carolina, and he actually built these cool little bunkers. He took that corrugated plastic and he sank it into the ground, and so they have a little cave. And then he framed around that with wood and dug all that out, and then he filled it with mulch and loose dirt, and then he covers that. And so that's how he kept his Russians outside. So I'm going to build something similar to that and let them stay outside. I mean, here in the South, I think they should do fine. He told me as long as it's on a high area that just doesn't, as long as water's not going in there during the winter, they'll be fine.
And do people, I don't know if this is like totally old stuff, but back in the day, the like calcium sticks to wear down the beak, is that still a thing? You know what I'm talking about?
You're talking about like
those
Cuttlebone?
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, I mean, Cuttlebone's good. If most of my turtles are eating a lot of, like with my aquatics, they're eating a lot of like hard shelled stuff. Even the cooters will every now and then pick up a clam and eat on the shell, or they'll eat, a crayfish or something. So they get a good amount of calcium. But I mean, all turtles, Cuttlebone's a good idea. So Cutta will walk over to that and just eat that thing. So.
Yeah. And the chat was wondering, do you want fly river turtles?
Who doesn't?
No, that's my answer too.
I would make a shady deal with the devil for a fly river turtle. They're beautiful, and I remember I was talking with Ken, and we were talking about he has this huge rec pond that Aquascape built in his backyard, and he refers to it as like they just dropped a Maserati behind his house. And I was telling him, I was like, if I had that, I was like, I would have like 2 or 3 fly river turtles in there, and I would just wake up every morning, just put on goggles and just drop myself in there and just hang out with fly river turtles, because they're the coolest. There's nothing like them. You can say they're like a sea turtle, but they're not. Or you can say they're like a soft shell, but they're not. They're like just, they're their own thing. And I mean, if you've seen one, you know what I'm talking about. They're awesome. So to answer that guy's question, hell yeah.
And is that something that is often attainable, or is that regulated in Georgia as well?
No. For $1,600, And if you're willing to take a chance on a little one, yeah, I want to say last time I looked at a little one, it was like $1,600 or something like that. But they need a lot of space. I would have to build like a dedicated pond. I would also have to want to spend $1,600 on a turtle. And the thing with turtles is, and I know some snakes are like this too, is sometimes they just die for no reason. Mm-hmm. And I would really hate for that to happen with a fly river turtle. But I know people that have them and they say there's no problem at all. I've talked to people at aquariums and they say they do fine. I know that socially they're a little combative with each other and they will, bite at each other and sometimes other turtles. So, if I ever was offered a fly river turtle or, had a good enough deal and my wife didn't know about it, I'd be like, yeah, no, pond, I would do it, man. They're awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm not really out trying to buy a lot of stuff right now. I have so much stuff that's given to me, and I enjoy taking care of what I have. I think now if I started adding stuff like that, it'd be just like I said, I'd have to be building stuff.
Yeah. And it seems like, you must have some amount of accidental breeding, right? Even if it's not your intention.
Yeah. No, yeah. I don't intend for my loggerhead musk turtles to breed, but they do it all year long, all day long. I can go out to the pond and here goes a female swimming by with a male hanging onto the back of her every single day. Like you could set your watch by it and they'll lay their eggs. They'll lay eggs like year round. They're like little rabbits. So with the loggerhead musk that happens, I have a painted turtle that just laid some eggs and I leave them in the ground. This year, I had some issues with my incubator last year. So now I'm just kind of letting stuff incubate in the ground. You get like a bigger, healthier baby when you do that.
Does the overall process take longer?
Sometimes, yeah. But what happens when you take turtles and people try to raise the incubation temperatures to like speed up development, you end up with extra scutes or, two heads or, some other, stuff that, when you start doing it too much, you're kind of blowing it. You're like, well, you had these 5 awesome eggs, and you got one. The rest of them, are like that. So doing them in the ground, like I said, I just get a healthier, bigger baby, and I get a higher success rate of hatching. So this year it's been so dry that we're basically waiting on rain to unlock them from the ground. But
so how does that work exactly? Explain the whole.
So when they lay them in the ground, and especially here where it's like hard clay, the ground is hard. So when it rains for a whole day or a whole couple days, and that ground gets soft, it'll come down and those eggs will get wet. And, let's say a lot of times they'll actually hatch inside that chamber. They can hang out in there. They've got their yolk in there, and they know that they have a lot of time in there. So once that water hits them, then they'll know to come out. And a lot of times turtles are laying eggs this time of year, and instead of hatching 90 days from now in the winter, they'll actually overwinter in the nest. And so a lot of times that's why, like, sometimes in March or April you'll see little baby turtles. Well, they overwintered in the nest.
Wow, that's crazy. So you're basically not exactly worrying about these eggs.
Nah, they do their own thing. And I think if you start stressing about eggs, you start to have kind of more problems. I know when I was like trying to incubate every egg that I ever got, and I was trying to get them all set up and stuff, I was hatching plenty, but I know that I was like, okay, well, are they gonna hatch, or maybe I need to raise the incubation temperature. I remember the one time I raised incubation temperatures, I all my turtles hatched, but I started getting like the weird scutes and stuff, and I was like, it's not worth it. And talking with some guys that breed a lot of turtles, they started off doing that, and then they've kind of gone back now to either in ground or doing longer incubation at like a lower temperature.
Gotcha. And before you said that you don't really focus on selling turtles, so what do you do with the babies?
They just go back into like little habitats. So I have these little tubs that are for growing out plants and for growing out like little snails and stuff. And I'll just put the little baby turtles in there. And if I have like friends that I know that, like, let's say it's loggerheads, because those are what I end up with a whole lot of. I'll give those to friends, or I'll give those to somebody that does education. There's a place in Atlanta, the Amphibian Foundation. I've given them some baby loggerheads, baby Florida snappers, stuff like that. So,
Gotcha. And as far as the babies go, or any of them in general, I mean, how do you keep them from being easy snacks for birds or whatever may get them?
yeah, that's part of it. I mean, a baby turtle is nature's Ritz cracker. So, a lot of times, if I know exactly where a nest is, I'll put some kind of cover over it, or since I'm home, working from home, I can kind of watch stuff throughout the day. So I know where stuff is and all that. And most of my stuff is pretty predator proof. I did this last year have like 2 hawks, and they would literally just hang out and stare at my turtle ponds. But they never actually got anything, but it's pretty unsettling when, you look out your back window and they're, just staring at your turtles, and you know what the intent is. So,
Well, you put the buffet right in front of them.
yeah, and that's the scary part is how do you deal with that? Because, well, hawks are protected, so I can't do anything malicious to them. So I have some fences set up. I have some wire and all that, and I think this year I'm probably going to run an electric fence. Hopefully not shock myself in the process, but I've noticed in my neighborhood we've got both red and gray foxes, and I saw a skunk that I thought was a cat, but it was a skunk. I didn't pet it, but I did see one of those. So I basically have like the big book of turtle predators. Yeah, I got every chapter in there. So yeah, that's kind of as living here kind of unfolds and I work on things. There's always going to be stuff to add. I'm going to get a camera system set up so I can kind of keep an eye from wherever I'm at. Like if I travel to Thailand and I'm in Thailand a month, it'd be easy to look and just see like what's going on in my backyard instead of, worrying sick.
Are things like the Russians, I mean, are those vulnerable, or what are the more vulnerable of the tortoises to, say, like coyotes or foxes or whatever you have?
I would say probably if I was a predator and I had to pick one out there to eat, it would probably be a Russian, because they're just like a little hamburger. But the way I set up them is I'm a big fan of clay pots. They're like the perfect little hide. And so what I did is in their enclosure, I dug it out and I sank this clay pot in there and kind of filled back in so that they can go up under there. And then around their enclosure, I make like a kind of a double wall, and then they have an overhang that they can get up underneath. And then, like I said, with an electric fence coming, there'll be kind of more to kind of predator proof it. Luckily, not too much comes into my yard because I also have a dog, and the presence of a dog is most of the time that's enough to keep away a lot of stuff. So I have a big dumb pit bull, and so luckily he pees all over everything, so everything knows he's there. So so far so good, but I don't think there's such a thing as being too safe. So it's just, like everything costs money and time and everything. The main thing when I get a turtle is just making sure that all its needs are covered. It has a safe place to hide, and then you work from there.
Gotcha. And is there anything that you plan to do as far as ponds, landscaping, any of that stuff in the future?
Yeah, I still have. So I have like the one pond that I show a lot on my Instagram, and then that's only half of the liner. I basically took that liner and cut it in half to build that one, with the idea of I'll either build another one just like it, or I'll if something happens to that one, I'll just have a replacement. So what I ended up doing is kind of having that second one, and then the guy that gave me the Russians gave me a pond liner, and then I think in my garage I saw it the other day. I was like, oh, I have another pond liner. So I'm gonna build a mud turtle habitat. They like they like temporary pools, and then they like to get up and hide and walk around on land and forage on land like a box turtle. So I want to build a habitat on land for them. I want to build another pond for the rest of my cooters. I want to kind of divide up the cooter group with the slider, 2 sliders or whatever. And then potentially, I don't know if anything will happen, but the guys at Aquascape are, they're always talking about building ponds for everybody and stuff. And they're like, maybe we'll build you a pond. I'm like, well, we'll see. So if anything happens with that, that would be cool. If not, I'll just do it myself. I can go source materials, and I enjoy building stuff. It's fun kind of making it come together, and you start off with like a vision of what you want and how you want it, and you just kind of make it happen. The one that I built, like I said, the one that I show a lot on my Instagram, that was the first one I built of that style. Growing up, I didn't think that you could use a liner pond with turtles. Everybody just said it doesn't work. So I always use stock tanks and tubs and stuff. But then building this one, and I wanted Aquascape to build one at my house, and they like told me, oh, you got to call your local contractor. So I called this guy, and I was like, hey man, I got this, this big yard. I'd like for you to come out, tell me how much it'll be to build like a big turtle pond. Just give me a price. I'm down to do this. And then he was like a dick. He was like, I hate turtles. He's like, I hate doing anything for turtles.
What?
And then he basically went on like a tirade about why he doesn't like them. And he was trying to tell me that it won't work. And I was like, all right, man. And he's like, yeah, I don't have time for this. And like hung up on me. So I was basically like, well, fuck that guy. I'm going to do it myself. So like a lot of the money that was saved, I was like, well, I'll go get a liner. I'll go get pumps, filters, rocks. I can find rocks. So I watched all the videos of how Aquascape, builds their ponds and how they do all that stuff. I mean, I would literally stay up every night till 2 or 3 a.m. just watching their videos. And so I got my buddy, and we just started digging. And I started, just following the steps in the videos of how they did it. Kind of learned the hard way. It helps to have all your rocks up front. Instead, I would kind of get rocks and then have to get my Honda Fit and drive to Alabama to get these like cool looking river rocks from this one spot, and then drive back. So it'd be funny because I'd be driving back with like 800 pounds of rock in my car and like dragging the butt, like going down the road, and like Honda Fit doesn't even want to do it. So I learned the hard way that it helps to just pay for that big pallet of rock up front. And then once you do that, you're kind of set. And like now that I know how to do it, I think I can do it better. And I'd like to keep doing it and do it better each time. But I also want to do just different styles. Like I said, a mud turtle pond. I want to do something. Maybe my next one, I want to do more like a Florida spring, because that's one of my favorite places. So maybe more sand, more limestone. And then maybe something big for some Gulf Coast box turtles, like something really big. So, and then I want to try and do an outdoor bull snake enclosure. And I know it's going to be probably a failure, but I want to do it anyway.
Dude, I think if you dig up and then sink in like
mesh underground, you put your dirt over it, you do your different grasses, some rocks, some logs, and then you do walls, and then you do an open top with a latch. It's possible. I mean, I've thought about it all the time, because I take my snakes out almost every day, and I let them cruise around and hang out. So it's funny because my bull snakes are not hissy or anything. They don't do all the cool stuff because they're so used to me, and they get to they move around the pond and go through the yard and all that stuff. So when I was watching them do that, I was also a little bit curious, would they behave differently outside? Would they look differently? Because turtles that are outside, they get more colorful, they get more contrast in their colors. And I was like, oh, maybe that would work that way with snakes. So
I would imagine if you did it correctly, you may never see them. He would just be in a hole.
Yeah, but well, it's funny because I actually like that. I think that's why I like looking for turtles, is like, because at home I set all my stuff up so my turtles can hide from me. So I have to like look around to find them. So yeah, I would love it if my bull snake was in there and I had to hunt around to see where he's at.
And then he just like pokes out his head, takes a rat, and goes back.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the little head comes out, or you just see like the tail sticking out. That would be sick. And that's kind of the stuff I want to start doing, is more stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, for my pits, like during a certain time of the year, you can just hear them in the enclosure trying to dig. you know, and continually digging.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, I wish I could somehow have like 4 feet of soil in some type of enclosure where they could actually like dig and make a burrow. Or
I wanted to get like a old driftwood tree stump and then put that in there with dirt around it. So, because you know they would want to get, you know, up under that tree stump. So it'd be like kind of a cool natural little spot for them.
yeah, and obviously you would be worried about like the composition of the soil, if it's going to hold a burrow, like it could collapse in on your snake, I suppose. So I don't know how any of that works.
Yeah. There's kind of a lot to consider, and I don't know if anybody's done it before. I mean, for a bull snake, I mean, I would imagine they've probably built something for indigos or something like that somewhere, but I don't really have anybody to ask about it. So it's more like engineer it in my head, buy all the crap, build it, see, you know, give it a trial run, see how it goes. The only bummer would be like if the snake gets out and it's like, oh, your snake's gone. That didn't work.
yeah. The only way to
tortoise pen
really test it is to have your snake in there, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest bull snake is big enough; it can't really squeeze through a lot. And I don't find them to be as bad as like king snakes or milk snakes, where they find some tiny thing and they're like, I'm gonna fit, you know.
Yeah, but it would be super awesome. And I know that, I mean, like Orient Society, you know, does those outdoor enclosures for the indigos.
Yeah.
I don't know how much overlap the behavior would have, but
I mean, they're not the same snake, but they're similar in a lot of ways. I know indigos and Florida pines have a lot of overlap and stuff. So I think if you could do it, whatever you do for an indigo, I think would work for a bull or a pine.
Yeah. I don't know, man. You got to do it.
Somebody do it before me.
Yeah, I mean, you see like Crutchfield keeping like retics outside and all types of stuff, and
yeah, and I always thought that was cool too. Is keeping you know, those big snakes outside. And as a kid, I grew up in Florida, so like as a kid, when you would go to those places, you would see that, and I just always wondered, like, well, okay, but is that possible with a yellow rat snake? You know, can you do that? And so, I mean, I'm sure there's people doing it, and I'd like to see more of that.
What do you think of like the overall move to more naturalistic, you know, coming from sterile tubs and stuff like that? It seems like the new generation is kind of more into things like bioactive and naturalistic.
Yeah, I met this guy at the Aquascape thing, Serpa Design. Do you know him, Tanner?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that guy? That guy's awesome, and I like that he builds that kind of stuff. That's awesome. I think if I were to talk about it with pine snakes or bull snakes, then you know you built a really nice setup that's not going to look like that tomorrow. So there is certain stuff that I think it works for and doesn't work for. I think the idea behind it, no matter what, is really good. That said, right now my bull snakes are in tubs, but that's also why I let them outside every day so that they're not stuck in a tub all day.
For me, I mean, at least for my Louisiana pines, they hate all types of anything human. Mm-hmm. That's warm. They pretty much hate anything. And I mean, the tub is the closest thing to a burrow I feel that I can get.
Well, yeah, and it kind of holds them kind of cozy and everything. And yeah, mine seem to like it. Like they have the tub, but then I also have like, you know, I'll put like a little hide box in there too. And they'll be cool with it for a while, and then eventually they're just like, nah, I'm gonna take a dump all over this thing. I'm gonna ruin it.
Yeah, and that's something to where, I don't keep in a tub on newspaper and with no hide or whatever. I try to at least give some substrate so they can push some stuff around with that.
Yeah, I do the aspen. I like the aspen. It also clumps around their crap. It's good. I like that. Like I said, I would like to do something more natural. And I just haven't seen anything in my lane yet. So I guess I just need to try it. But I do like the move towards building all that stuff. Having watched a lot of YouTube videos on that and all that stuff, it's cool because I respect it a lot, because it's a lot like what I like to do outside, but people are doing it, and I think Tanner at Surfer Design, I think he does it in like a mason jar.
Yeah, there's people who
crazy
make
stuff.
Yeah, they make fairy gardens. I don't even know what the hell they are, but they're basically like these miniature terrariums where they can grow little, make all different kinds of, grow different plants and whatnot. It's impressive.
Yeah.
And, by the way, Greg, this is Melissa.
I'm not actually in
Hello.
thing.
She will be in the
There
shot
you go.
now. Magic. So, yeah, we've been talking about turtles.
Gotcha.
I think what is fun, kind of a new thing that I've been seeing more so, is the morphs in turtles. So what do you think about these like red ear slider morphs and whatnot?
I don't have a problem with them. I'm not into morphs that much. I see it and I appreciate it for sure. I see the attraction. When I see like a albino red-eared slider in person, or an albino Chinese soft shell or something, they're really cool looking. They're not what I'm into. I'm into like more like, I like a classic, example of something, or a particularly well marked version of something. With stuff that I've tried to breed in the past, I would breed for certain traits I just thought were nice. Like when I was focusing on breeding Florida snapping turtles, I liked a bright orange shell and like as white as possible skin, because I like that color, variance. But then the West Coast ones are very dark and they have like really long things on the neck. So I was like, okay, well, I want to do those too. And then with loggerheads, I like to breed for like fine speckling, light colored skin, all that kind of stuff. But I don't really do a lot. I mean, to get into like all the morphs and stuff, I mean, that's a lot up front. Because I looked at albino snappers at one point. I went to, I think, the Daytona show, and there was a guy, and I was like, man, that's a lot of money for a snapping turtle. Coming from me getting turtles for free a lot of the time, or a lot of rehomes. But I do like some of the hypo stuff. Sometimes I'll see that, I'll be like, that looks, when they look natural but like enhanced, that's probably my best way to put it, is what I like.
Yeah. Are there any light sensitivities with those, with the lighter colored turtles?
So if I were to reference somebody I know, my friend John Richards, he breeds alligator snapping turtles. He has Loggerhead Acres Turtle Farm, and sometimes me and him will get in phone conversations for an hour or two about alligator snappers. And I was asking him, they have like a leucistic and a hypo, and yeah, he said that some of them seem to be sensitive to light. Some of them seem to have some issues with the hind legs sometimes. So sometimes coming along with those morphs, you do see certain physical characteristics maybe not being that good. I know that a lot of times with those hypos, the clown, the albino, a lot of times when you see those, it'll get back to what we were talking about earlier with the higher incubation tips. You'll see the extra scutes or misaligned scutes, stuff like that. I'm sure you've seen the pink-bellied side neck with the heart exposed in the middle of the shell. So that's somebody getting into breeding for a morph, but also trying to hurry up the incubation process. So
someone trying to make money.
Oh yeah, everybody trying to make money. I can't hate on somebody trying to make money, but I'm not a fan of trying to make money at the expense of making mutant turtles.
Right.
That aren't ninjas.
That aren't teenaged either.
Yeah, middle-aged.
When you said rehome, it made me think of something Joe and I talk about all the time. And snakes, there's those people who like rescue snakes and it's their big thing. And there's many people who do the rescue of snakes well. There's many people who don't. I was wondering if, in the turtle world, like, are those people out there who just like their whole thing is rescuing turtles and rehoming turtles?
Yeah. I mean, there's always people that, people like to use that rescue word. They like to use that a lot. Like they ran into a burning building. But in reality, a lot of times I think everybody has good intentions that does it. But I think sometimes you walk a fine line of hoarding. That's one reason why I had to tell, I was telling you earlier, the Georgia Reptile Society was giving out my number. I eventually had to, tell one of them, I was like, hey, I'm kind of at max right now. I'm not really looking to take on anything else, So there's people that take on stuff and they just don't stop. And I think it's people like having something new. But the problem is you're putting books on a shelf, and eventually they're going to start falling off the other end. Like something's got to give. And it depends on your amount of space and experience. And I know guys that take on a lot of turtles, and I've been to their houses and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? They'll have a 10-foot pond with 50, 60 turtles in it.
Jesus.
And I can walk around in there and find a dead one somewhere. And that's when it's like, okay, well, you might have rescued them from this, but then you brought them here
and killed them.
Yeah. So again, I don't think anybody's a bad person. I think it all starts with good intentions, but I think especially with turtles, it's easy to get in over your head. Because a lot of them have special needs. Different species need different things. You can't treat everything like a red-eared slider. You can treat a red-eared slider like dirt and it'll be fine, but you can't treat everything like that.
And I think that's kind of where people in the rescue world fall into the trap, is that like they want to rescue everything, and they're like, oh, let me rescue all snakes, but wait, no.
And bearded dragons.
Right. But even within snakes, it's like that, just because you want to say snakes, just because it's all one animal, there's so many, there's so many different.
Be an expert in all those species in order to actually help them.
And it's hard because it's like on one end, I'm like you said, there's good intention. Like, you'd rather like you take it than this person, release it or do something else with it. But then it's hard, I think.
Resources, money, space, all this.
Right. Yeah, and with turtles, they live a long time. So it's like, okay, you rescued 50, 60 turtles. All right, good job. You got them all set up. All right, most of those are going to outlive you. Now what?
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's even worse.
Yeah, that's something I have to think about every day. Is it's like I do have a good amount of turtles. Most of them are going to outlive me. I mean, I'd like to outlive a few of them. I don't want to die too young, but there is responsibility that comes with it. So okay, what happens after me? Do these have a place to go where they're going to be safe and taken care of? And so you're better off to plant those seeds early. If you're doing a rescue, don't take anything in if you don't potentially have somewhere for it to go. I mean, because otherwise you're a crazy cat lady. We've all seen that lady. She's driving down the road. She's like, a cat, like stop the car in traffic, chase it across an intersection.
And they also see what happens to when the crazy cat lady dies, and they go in their house on the episode of Hoarders.
And the cats are eating her.
Yeah, crazy stuff. In turtles, is there like a quarantining process that is important?
We were just talking about Russian tortoises. So I had gotten one of my newest turtles that I have. I got these Russian tortoises. Well, I got 2 from a lady that had kept them in her house, and then I got a group of them from a guy that kept them outside. So one thing you want to do is you want to keep this group separate from this group as long as you can before you start kind of integrating them. You want to watch, you want to check their poop, you want to check their behavior. If you can take them to a vet, get a quick checkup, make sure everybody's good, no parasites. With Russian tortoises, they carry a herpes virus. So,
I did not know that.
Yeah, and they're going to mix it up. And if there's herpes in there, it's like that thing, like if 5 people, well, I've got 7 Russian tortoises, somebody's got herpes. So, so there is a quarantine process. Same with aquatic turtles. You just want to give everything some time. You want to watch behavior, watch what it's eating, what it's passing, and then you can start to kind of integrate it in. And then some stuff just doesn't get along with other stuff. I've introduced musk turtles before, and for whatever reason, one musk turtle just is out to get another one. They just aren't going to get along.
Is that sex dependent at all, or just random?
It can be. Like if a male is too pushy, he'll drive the female. So he'll drive the females to where they get stressed, and when they get stressed, they'll leave the water. So if you have an aquatic turtle, like a musk turtle or something that's not a basking species, and it all of a sudden starts basking a lot, and you've maybe got another one of those. Like let's say you have 2 razorback musk turtles and a red-eared slider. Your red-eared slider basks all the time. It's supposed to. But then, one of your razorback musk turtles is out of the water all the time. You check it, it's not gravid, so it's not looking to lay, but it's just sitting there and not moving. It's stressed out and it's just trying to get away from the other one. So yeah, like anytime I introduce stuff, I basically like you got to sit there like they're kids. You just got to sit there and watch them, and if they're starting to act like he's touching me, and getting like kind of cranky with each other, then it's okay, well these two aren't going to get along. And then they'll go through periods of not getting along, and they'll work it out. As long as you have places for them to get away. Like I said, I like to use clay pots. If you got musk turtles fighting and they got a little clay pot to get into, well, then that one, as soon as that one's in that clay pot, he's just going to leave it. And then the one that's in there is going to feel safe. And then it just kind of resets, and then the day goes on. And, that seems to work pretty well.
Are there any turtles that have any like cannibalistic behaviors at all?
Oh, yeah. I think turtles are like secretly like little savages. Like, if you think your red-eared sliders are friends, just let them get hungry long enough, and one of them will definitely eat the other one. But then like certain turtles are known, like Mexican giant musks will eat smaller turtles. Alligator snapping turtles love to eat musk turtles and small turtles. I had a razorback musk turtle years and years ago that would like to dig up and try to eat soft shells, so I couldn't keep it with soft shells. Most turtles are opportunists. They'll just, if there's an opportunity to eat something, they'll do it. Like box turtles will eat their own baby box turtles if you don't keep an eye on them.
And in the wild, I mean, I can imagine that those baby turtles are being eaten by like almost everything in the nest and stuff like that. So yeah. What is kind of your biggest concern as far as when you have babies coming out and being so vulnerable, besides like obviously we talked about predators outside and stuff like that, but are they also more vulnerable to say like RIs or anything like that?
I would say RIs if they hatched out in the fall or too early in the spring maybe. Usually what'll happen with that though is their turtles are so driven by the sun that like if they hatch out and anything's wrong with them, they're going to go right in the direct sunlight. So they kind of know that if they have any kind of RI, they're going to go seek out the sun. They're going to try and dry out, try and get warm. So 9 times out of 10, that's what they'll do. That's why like when you've got a pet, turtle at your house and it's starting to act sick, it's probably going to go climb out of the water or climb under a lamp and then just sit there. So that's usually what you'll see with that. And so with baby turtles, one of the main things is just to give them a safe space. So let's say you're not in Pennsylvania, but you have box turtles and you have your pen set up and they laid in there. You want to give like a bunch of tiny little areas to hide. You want basically like how you flip for snakes or salamanders, create that same stuff. Create like a big flat log or like a big flat stone, all that kind of stuff, and give those babies little places, and they'll get in there.
And I guess that's where they would also find their prey, which is like typically earthworms and stuff like that.
Yeah, earthworms, pill bugs, small centipedes and millipedes, grubs. They'll eat, a lot of stuff. I've seen them eat just like old wood. I've seen a box turtle just sit.
What?
Yeah, I've been out herping before and just watched a box turtle just sit and eat old wood off of a log. And I don't know if it smelled like fungi or something because they like to eat, mushrooms. But I've just seen them eat old wood, and I've read reports of other turtles eating wood for no real reason.
That's very strange.
Well, they're not smart either. So.
Well, I've seen that thing where like people have a tortoise and it either comes over and like humps your leg or tries to bite your toes and stuff like that.
Yeah, they'll do that too. I mean, you can give a sulcata. You can take a tub and just flip a tub upside down, and sulcata will walk over and put the moves on it.
And go ahead.
I'm super ADD right now. I have a thought that like would have been good like 10 minutes into the podcast, but
What got you interested in turtles?
no. Some
What's
of
up with that shirt?
what?
Oh, I was gonna say you're gonna ask about my shirt or something.
Oh, no.
Okay, cool.
Your face though.
Oh, well, now I feel like I should ask about your shirt.
No, yeah.
Okay.
No, sometimes I wear the shirt. People ask if I'm trying to look like Ace Ventura or something.
Oh, that is very true.
Okay.
Now that you say that.
No, I was just saying, like, turtles are an interesting animal to me in like society view, because I don't feel like they're like hated like snakes are, but I don't feel like people understand them, if that makes sense. You know, they're
That's
not
almost their downfall,
right.
That they're cute and people
but they're
actually
not
like
they're
them.
not like dog cute, you know, to people. They still don't get the like cuddly dog cat like people love, but they're not like hated. They're like in a weird middle ground, but they're also feared. They're not feared, but I don't also think they're respected.
I get what you're saying. They're almost like kind of lumped in with like frogs a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll tell people I'm into turtles, and they're for whatever reason they're like, "Oh, you like frogs?" I'm like, I guess. But yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I think the general view on turtles is most people will say, "Oh, I had a pet turtle," or "Oh, I saw one in the road," or "We had one in our yard one time." So most people, their immediate thought is a weird slider, or a box turtle, or maybe a snapping turtle. But they don't have like a good, PR rep. They don't really have, and a lot of times, I like all my other, I guess, colleagues in the turtle world, but I think sometimes the hard part is getting all the information out there, but making it palatable. Because you can't just walk up to the average person. You want to convince turtles are awesome and start spouting off species names and talking about where in Southeast Asia they're from and this and that. You got to make it like something that people can stomach, that isn't kind of a nerd overload. Because at that point you might as well just start talking about like, man, I love Dungeons and Dragons too.
Yeah, which kind of sucks because I never see it like that, and I probably go too deep with some people and I don't realize like I look like a giant loser. But
no, you know the people to go deep with. That sounds very wrong. But it's interesting because with snakes, people's response is like, "Oh, kill it" or whatever.
Yeah, they tell you about that one story about them chopping one's head off. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to hear. In what world do you think that that's a proper response to my love of snakes? It's just talk about you killing them. I don't.
But so I think there's more people out there who have killed snakes, but I think there's also more people who have mistreated turtles. And like, remember I told you the other day,
in a little plastic thing.
I was literally driving, and there's this man in the median, like with the little plastic thing, selling it at the like corner of the street. And I'm like, wait, do people literally like stop their car at the stoplight and like buy a turtle for like, how does this work? It just blew my mind. And I'm like, no one would ever do this with the snake, but at the same time, they would kill the snake. So it's like, which one's worse?
Yeah, turtles have fell into this like weird spot because like you go to like Panama City Beach, Florida, and you go in a beach store and it's like, get a baby turtle with a, like it's like those and like hermit crabs. They're this like disposable little pet,
right?
And it's the problem that's been going on since like the 50s and the 60s when they were doing the little plastic thing with the palm tree and for 10-cent red-eared sliders. So that it's been going on like that for a long time, and that's honestly part of the problem. And there's, it's out of my hands to try and figure out how to stop that. But the best thing I can do is kind of be able to put some kind of information out there that, like, let's say somebody does have a turtle that they bought from, that bozo on the street selling them, maybe they find somebody like me that's putting out, okay, well, here's how you actually, should take care of it. And then you'll have a pet that you can have, potentially for the rest of your life, and like I said, make it palatable. And, you don't want to make it feel like you're talking down to people, like, shaming them for having bought it, because once they bought it and they have it, it's got to go somewhere. So, you want to work with people and work with what people can do. Not everybody has, a big backyard. A lot of people have a turtle and live in an apartment. some of the best aquariums and tub setups I've seen have been people that live in apartments. You know, I've got a buddy down in Florida, and him and his wife, they do these really cool setups with these tubs, and he'll send me videos to my phone, and, you know, it kind of blows me away. And then it's like, okay, well, I want to do that, but outside, you know? and I think if you can get people into that aspect of it, then it adds another dimension to the hobby. You know, if you can get people into building a habitat and into kind of enjoying, you know, waterscaping, or, you know, making a terrarium if it's a land turtle or tortoise.
Or else you see, I think in snakes, one of our downfalls is the fact that there isn't that. So the way to keep yourself occupied is to buy another snake.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, I kept snakes, so I've been there. And I would say snakes probably, as far as general pets, maybe have it the worst, you know, unless you're like a tiger salesman or something. But I think snakes kind of have it the worst because, especially with everything that happened in Florida, I think now, like, I mean, if you keep pythons, you know, now everybody's, you know, shame on you for having pythons, and look what happened in Florida and all of that. So, it's also just, I feel like, gotten harder to be a herp keeper over the last 5 or 6 years. And it'll probably get even harder, you know?
And I think it's going to take years to convince people in Florida, or who know about, or who are misinformed about the situation in Florida. I think it's going to take many years for that stigma
it's only
to be removed. Right. I don't even know when it'll be, you know, removed, or people have different
to be
views
honest,
about it.
As people who are in the hobby, in the pet hobby, or are reproducing animals, like, I hate the fact that we're lumped in, whether you like it or not. I mean, our industry has created issues in Florida, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, the last few times I went to shows, I was kind of burnt out. It's like, you have, for every good table of somebody that's doing it right and doing all that, you've got the guys that are dealers. You know, they're called dealers, just like drug dealers are called dealers. You know, except these guys wear Crocs and have long hair, and, you know, they're kind of like, ugh, you know, and it's weird because you'll see the same guys all the time. And, you know, I'm not going to knock anybody for making a living, but I also don't think there's a lot of ethics kind of at a show. I think it's more like, well, I can sell this 10-year-old this, you know, Asian viper, you know. He's got the money. His parents gave him money. All right, have fun, kid. You know, and I'm sure that's an extreme example, and I'm sure it doesn't work that way. But I see a lot of that kind of stuff, and that just kind of bummed me out. But I am seeing a lot more, like, kind of getting involved with social media and seeing stuff on Instagram and seeing stuff through YouTube, and you're starting to see more people like you guys, like a husband and wife that's doing this and doing it the right way, and communicating with people, as opposed to, you know, go to our website and click down a list of, you know, all these different snakes using the exact same picture from 7 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing a group of people doing it better 100%. And then you're seeing some of the same old. But I mean, if you want to be optimistic about it, I mean, I think that one day, if we do enough outreach and educate the consumer enough, and if these show promoters also take a stake into it and say, hey, we're not going to really allow these things going on, we're going to promote, you know, people doing the right thing, then maybe that will eventually weed itself out. Because unfortunately, if we don't police ourselves, someone's going to do it for us. So
yeah, I think more often than not, when I talk to somebody now, they're either conservation minded, or they're of the mindset of they want to do better, you know, than what has been the standard. So there's definitely like you're saying, like, looking on the positive side, I definitely think there's a trend towards things getting better, people being more creative. And I think with, you know, like, again, social media, there's like this cool sharing of ideas, people being able to show people what they do or talk about how they do it. And there's less of like an industry secret kind of vibe anymore, and it's more like, people really wanting to get involved. And I love Louisiana pine snakes, and that's a snake that I don't know if they'll last long in the wild on their own. And I think that the only thing that is going to save them on their own is the people that have pure Louisiana pines getting together and doing something to build something in the future, because one day there might be nothing. And, turtles are a good example of that, because there's a lot of turtles that they're just gone. When I was in Asia, I was like, man, this place is like Florida. There's going to be turtles everywhere. This is going to be fun. The whole time I was there for a month, I saw one.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I'd like to think I know how to find turtles, and I saw one. And that kind of bummed me out. And it dawned on me that the reality of what that is that's a lot of people eating them. And they've been eating them for hundreds or thousands of years over there. Well, America's been around, a handful of hundreds of years. And you've got, here in the South, it's like, if people see a turtle, they're like, oh, turtle soup, everybody, turtle soup. It's like, I don't even know who likes soup that much. That's so weird.
Come to Louisiana.
Yeah.
Soup.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
James was saying that you still can get snapping turtles. You just need like a license or a permit.
Yeah, Louisiana is still behind on the laws as far as protecting alligator snapping turtles. So there's a permit, and I think you're allowed one per person per year or something like that of a household. And I think it has to fall within a certain weight limit. But the dumb part of that is the weight limit is basically breeding females and breeding males. So you're basically, with the way turtles work, the older they get, the more fertile turtles are. So if you have just a super old, smooth shell, ancient female, she's actually producing most of the successful clutches of that population. So when somebody goes and traps it and eats it, well, now you've just, by taking that one turtle, made a significant dent in the population.
So that's actually the opposite of most animals, at least,
Yeah.
that you set up.
There's no peak. They just
no. Yeah, they just kind of keep going, especially the females. And I have a hunch that with a lot of turtles, I think females might actually get older than males. Some of the alligator snappers and some of the box turtles I've seen, those are two turtles that are known for getting old. Some of the ones that have been the oldest that I've seen were all females. I think guys, we're just harder on things, and we get mixed up in the wrong stuff.
Yeah, we're curious.
Okay, you're equating yourselves to turtles right now. I mean, I do that all the time. Okay, backtracking a little bit, talking about, you would go places and you wouldn't see any turtles and kind of the Louisiana pines. Do you know of any repopulation projects like the Memphis Zoo? Was that who's doing the Louisiana pine one? Yeah, like that for turtles.
There are. It's really hard to, as a private individual, get involved. I know the Atlanta Zoo works with different species. They work with some Asian stuff. They work with I think some South American and Mexican box turtles. And I know that it's tough, because you can't just be the guy off the street and say, oh, well, you have 5 females of this, I've got 5 males. I couldn't. If I wanted to, I could not give turtles to the Atlanta Zoo and then take them and be part of a breeding program, because there's a protocol.
Right.
AZA has a protocol of how they get stuff, how they acquire it. So then it comes down to places like the Orient Society. They do. I don't know if they're breeding spotted turtles or anything like that, or bog turtles for repopulation. I know the state of Georgia, when it comes to stuff like that, they don't really do that as much as their policy is more just like a hands-off, let's just leave it alone and let it repopulate on its own. And I don't know how much longer that would be feasible for things like bog turtles. I know their numbers are low enough, and then they're just running out of habitat. And,
so wait, they just think it's gonna... I don't understand the hands-off approach.
We talked a bit about earlier how Georgia has really restrictive herp laws. So the corn snakes, you can't have the corn snakes. So he was talking about a bunch of species of pines. So it seems like their method is just like, if we stop the pet
If we
trade
stop
or
taking
whatever,
them,
it's going to
then it's going to work
somehow
itself out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk out of place and try and act like I know all the laws all the way through, but yeah, that's basically the way most of Georgia's protection laws work. Is the idea is that it's protected, so if it's hands off and nobody messes with it, that'll keep people from either taking them out of the state or killing them and eating them, or something like that. And then if the habitat is protected, then they should be fine on their own. I, if it's up to me, I would say that's probably not enough. But then, a state government is a government. It's funding's got to come from somewhere, and it's pretty hard in the state of Georgia to convince Bubba down the street, like, we need to save the turtles.
But wouldn't the zoo be able to do that on their own? Like, do they have to mess with the government? Oh.
Well, yeah, I mean, and my understanding is that zoos kind of operate on their own thing, and they do get permission through the state to do stuff. Again, I don't work at the Atlanta Zoo, so I can't say specifically what they're doing. But it's just it's all there's a lot of gears. There's a lot of
bureaucracy and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. But I was up till 5 a.m.
Herps fall down at the bottom of that.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're not mammals. They're not birds. I had talked to a guy at the state one time. I was like, hey man, I'd like to see if we can get like they do the Save Wildlife license plates. I was like, hey man, like, could we do like an alligator snapping turtle license plate? And he's like, well, you and I would think that's cool. He's like, nobody else is going to want it. And so like, the ideas kind of get snuffed right away. And, cause the sad part about herps is like, the average person maybe doesn't want, the gaping jaws of an alligator snapping turtle on the back of their, Toyota Sienna minivan.
Cool.
I'm about to get that PA Hellbender license plate.
That's really sick. I would do it.
They don't have one. I'm just hoping for it. It's a state amphibian. Damn it. We should
have a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
Make your own. Make counterfeit license plates. Make front plates.
That sounds like a good
profit.
idea.
Yeah, Hellbender on the front. It just says "Suck it, PA."
I think a lot of people would like that.
I feel like something I gotta ask you is, as a herper, is there anywhere in the world that you would like to herp that you haven't yet?
You love that question.
South America sounds fun. I'd like to check out the Amazon, and I'd love to see all the South American river turtles, Central American river turtles. I would say first, before I do any of that, I'd like to go back to Asia. I'd like to do more herping there. I was because at the time I was there for my wedding and kind of traveling and all that stuff. I wanted to break away and go look for snakes and all that stuff, and I didn't really get a chance to. So the times when I looked for turtles, it was a little bit easier because I know how to look for like water turtles, and I know how to find like land-based turtles when they're moving. But the snakes over there, I didn't really, other than having some reticulated pythons and knowing they were there, that was kind of it. So I'd like to go back there and do like maybe a 2 weeks solid of nothing but herping and looking for snakes, looking for different monitors, turtles. The cool thing is when you get over there, and I remember we were at the little villa that we were staying at on this island, and the frogs that were calling sounded crazy. Like it was just like the weirdest call. And like that was like one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, they would be completely different. And so like just that, I mean, I could probably go find what to somebody over there is the most boring thing and think it's so cool just because I've never seen it. So I'd like to first go back there and do that right, and then maybe work on like Central or South America, which I feel like every herper's already done.
Yeah.
Well, Asia's a little bit farther.
Yeah.
I had a question, but I kind of forgot, but I'm going to get back to it. North American species. I mean, is there anywhere, even say in Georgia, like something that eludes you?
Bog turtles. I've gone looking for them. I've gone to places where I know they're at. I've seen their little footprints in the mud. I went there to try and shoot a photo of one time, and like I said, I just saw footprints, and so I've never seen those. I'm gonna try and get with a guy that works for the state that has a program for them, and see if I can go to one of his sites when he goes and radio tracks them and shoot some photos of them. I've never seen a live Diamondback terrapin in Georgia. Never seen a wild one. I've seen them run over, but never seen a live one. And I think that's it. So, I mean, as far as Georgia stuff, North American, I'd love to see a wood turtle in the wild. That would probably be pretty epic. I know you guys.
Where are wood turtles exactly? What's their habitat and range?
They like woodland streams. So if you can find some woodlands with some deciduous trees and like a rocky, cool stream flowing through it, and you're within range, then theoretically, if they're there, they should be there. But like I said, I've never actually been up there and been with somebody in the know, because that's like one thing with turtles is you can kind of read all you want, but until you actually have somebody to maybe nudge you in the right direction or show you a couple things, you may never find them. They're surprisingly good at hiding, and a lot of turtles are kind of picky about where they hang out, or you'll get into places where there's pockets. So you can have a river, and you can have one section that has 100 barber's map turtles basking. You can go around the bend in that river, habitat looks exactly the same, and not see any, but they like that one spot.
So is it very often that species are rather separated in the wild?
Separate, you mean like a fragmented range?
No, like from each other. Like, are you less often to see, 3 species in the same place? Or
for an example, a guy texted me about today. A guy was looking for striped mud turtles, and he was looking in this one creek. So this one section of creek, the striped mud turtle replaces the loggerhead musk turtle because the bottom is like a sticky, kind of mucky clay, and it's not as much like gravel and rock. And so in that sticky, mucky area, it's also a floodplain. So you'll have the striped mud turtles hang out there. But then you go a mile or two downstream and it becomes rocky and swift and all that. And then now the loggerheads are there, but then the mud turtles aren't there. So you get like habitat specialists, and they, if they're filling the same niche, then a lot of times they won't overlap. So.
Yeah, I don't know. That just seems so particular and cool. The way that obviously like stream bottom can change, and then you have a different turtle inhabiting.
Well, and you won't find common snappers where you find an abundance of alligator snappers. They don't get along. Alligator snappers will eat common snappers.
And do they have any type of like territorial behaviors?
Commons are a lot more territorial with each other. If you look on YouTube, there's tons of videos of common snappers fighting, and I mean, you can go in the spring and fall and you can see them doing it. So males like to try and control an area, and any female that comes in there is that male's, and if another male shows up, they're going to fight. Alligator snappers seem to kind of not necessarily be social, but be as close to social as a turtle can get. Back in May, on 2 nights in a row, I went with one group of friends, and we found 3 adult alligator snappers all feeding together, and it was like 2 males and a female, and like all next to each other. Like you found one and the other one was next to it. And then I went back with Noah actually, and we went and we caught 4 or 5 that night, and it was like we would find one and then find another, and then I went upstream, and there was actually 2 extra males, but you can only carry 100-pound turtle at a time. So I came walking back, and I was like, hey, I found another one. And so like during breeding season, they get really tolerant of each other, and you'll find them clustered up in groups. And when an area is really good for feeding, they'll all go and eat in the same area. And then, like now when it's dry, they've all kind of spread out and you won't really see them again. Not like that probably until next spring. But they do tolerate each other a lot more than common snappers do. Loggerhead musks and a lot of the musk turtles, you'll find them in pretty good densities. They might bicker a little bit, but that's pretty common. And then, your cooters and sliders, a lot of times if you go to a river or somewhere, you'll see them lined up on a log and, they all seem to get along.
And James Lewis in the chat asks, what's your biggest common snapper that you've ever found, and what's your biggest alligator snapper?
Biggest common. The hard thing with the biggest common is I caught one when I was a kid. I was 13 or 14, and it just seemed like the biggest thing ever. I had the really crappy cell phone, where it flipped and it took it looked like a watercolor painting. The quality was so bad. I just remember the only thing I had was my hand, and the common snapper's foot was as big as my hand. And then there was Florida snapper
in his shell.
What's that?
And there was a musket ball lodged in his shell.
Yeah, that old. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. People talk about that all the time, but I've never actually seen a photo or evidence of it. But
right.
I caught a Florida snapper one year that was probably, if it wasn't the one in Kentucky, it would be this Florida snapper. This alligator snapper is, there's some photos on my Instagram of me with a really big yellow one, and he's probably in the neighborhood of 100 pounds. They get bigger than that, but that's pretty rare. I mean, people talk about 100-pounders, and zoos always talk about how theirs weigh 150 or 175, but natural weight in the wild is most males 80 to 100 pounds is pretty normal. Anything above that is a real monster, and there's very few of those.
Is there any actual danger involved with, say, a large alligator snapper luring with his mouth open?
So I used to say that that's not going to happen. And then one time I was I was in a shallow area, and I could see that one had gone up under a log. And so I used to just reach up under logs and grab them just because I knew they were in there, because normally they just kind of go in and park. And what I didn't know was this guy had turned around and was facing out luring. And literally as quick as I reached under there, it was just bang. It was like a firecracker went off on my finger. It bit me, and I yanked my hand back, and he just went flying off. And I literally still have a scar on this finger where he popped me. And the jaws on those young ones the hook is real sharp, and then the edges, they're like little razor blades for cutting fish up. And popped me, and he was luring. But I basically went down the list of everything not to do if you don't want to get bit, and I did it. So that was on me. In reality, you're not going to walk through a creek and step in the mouth of an adult alligator snapper luring. It's not going to happen. By the time you get near them, they're going to either move away, or they're real shy in the water. They'll kind of tuck their head, and they don't really want anything to do with you. Even the most aggressive ones, when you get in the water with them, their mouth closes up and they get calm, and you can touch them and stuff.
Yeah. So Greg, we've talked about hookers counting turtles. You missed that one.
Yeah. Okay.
And all the other cool turtle stuff. Thanks for being our turtle podcast. We're now.
Thanks, guys.
And if anyone wants to get in contact with you or check out social media, where can they find you?
Greg's Turtle Haven on Instagram and Greg's Turtle Haven on YouTube. I just started the YouTube channel, so I'm trying to grow it. So if you want to watch turtle videos, if you want to watch me find turtles in the wild or learn how to take care of what you have, then follow me on YouTube, Greg's Turtle Haven.
Sweet. And then you're also Dead Snake Greg as well on Instagram.
Yeah. If you want to get on Instagram and see videos of weird looking people in traffic, see me make fun of people, say weird shit, then Dead Snake _ Greg on Instagram.
Sweet. As for us,
if people want to reach out to us, Instagram, Port City Pythons, Facebook, Port City Pythons, YouTube, Port City Pythons, portcitypythons.com, the Port City Pythons at Gmail. If you want to email us.
Maryland.
Yes, in 6 days, if I am still alive and awake, we will be in Baltimore.
Greg herped all last night. He didn't even sleep last night.
Yeah, but that was fun and by choice.
That's
Yeah.
my exhaustion is not my choice.
Noah made me do it.
Yeah. What am I saying? Shoot, but we will be in Baltimore, Maryland Repticon just on Saturday. So if you're in that area, come check us out.
Yeah, it's a 2-day show, but we will only be there on Saturday. So if you want to see us,
only Saturday. There we will be.
There we will be.
Great.
That's one way to say it. Thank you
Yes.
guys so much for hanging out with us. Thank you to Greg, and we will catch you guys later.
Bye.